Welcome. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism podcast and book club. Today, I'm Ikemba. We Charge Colonialism, serving on the Public Relations Committee. I guess everybody can introduce themselves. You're on mute. Okay.
Sorry, Attorney Cherie. I'm the steering committee chair of We Charge Colonialism. Hope everyone's doing well this day. Frank, now you're on mute.
All right, my name is Frank Malba, member of WCC. I am the chair for the Political Action Committee.
All right, so that's our team. And, today we're going to continue to discuss the Wretched of the Earth. So, if you've been following us, we're going to start on chapter 4. For all of those who are just joining us, we'll have a link in the chat so you can follow us. We're going to be in chapter 4 discussing national culture. So you can be prepared for that in the second half. But right now, we want to discuss what's happening currently. So this is our weekly roundup. And, we're going to start with you, Frank.
You muted again.
Sorry.
No, it's early in the morning.
Yeah. All right. So the first issue we have on the agenda here is the opposition leader in Togo. Not Togo, DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo. So as you all know, election is coming out, I think this Sunday. The pool will be opening for election. But unfortunate for the strong opposition leader named Kolila, he died to what we are hearing as COVID related death. But as I read and found some information about him, he was a diabetic. He actually had a diabetes. But he went through all the election time period, and then just on his last election day, which was supposed to be, this past Friday, and then he was diagnosed in one of the local hospitals in Congo Brazzaville, and then was later airlifted to France, and while en route, he died of COVID, as we are hearing. And the issue here is, as I also read, it says that the election cannot be announced if one of the candidates, actually died. And the whole thing about this election process in Togo, it looks somehow fishy, because as what happened in Uganda was the same thing that happened, happening right now in DRC, because as I also learned that the internet was also shut down, due to this whole election issue. And he also died at the age of 61. And the current president right now, he came into power in 1997. Let's say 1979. At that time, some of us were not even born. In 1979, Denise, 77 years old right now, he came into power. And then he was into power till 1992, where he was defeated. And then after 5 years, 1997, he came back again and ran and won. And up to present, he's still the president in that part of Africa.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you for that. You had mentioned the diabetes, that he was I guess like diagnosed from diabetes. So I guess how many ever years ago? But are you saying like with the COVID, it's questionable if he had passed away from COVID-19?
Yeah, the reason why I say it's questionable as well, because in what I read, a report from BBC, it says that French prosecutor has announced a criminal investigation. So criminal investigation. So the thing here is, people are saying he died from COVID, but where does the French prosecutor coming from saying that he have launched or announced a criminal investigation into the case? of this man.
That's very
So
respect. Yeah.
yeah, so that should sink in. If this is somebody died from a natural death or COVID, and then you saying you launch a criminal investigation. So this is, this is something that we should look out. That these imperialists, they say some of these things to turn us off, to say that, oh, okay, they are for us, and because we know what they are doing in that part of Africa, in that region. We know what they are doing there with their UN and so forth, saying 60 years, and these people have president, but they never have peace. They never have they never experience what they call peace. And this man coming out saying that they're going to launch a criminal investigation, relating to his death. That shows to us that this guy did not actually die from COVID.
But that's it, because I mean, all right, so DRC is a complicated place in itself, in that we know that it's like the most under siege area of Africa, because it's the most minerally rich country in Africa. It's funny, the Congo is it's the richest country, but it's the poorest country at the same time, because the people are the poorest. The fact that the French are saying this, though, I mean, there's always going to be I think a hyper political situation over in the DRC because of the mineral riches of their country. So I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that we can believe, honestly. I don't know if there's any leader we could believe coming out of there. Most of them, if they're being positioned to be possibly the winner of the election or whatever, I don't feel like those people are necessarily going to be beholden to the people. So I would want to know more what was the politics of this guy? Was he someone that was the people need to seize control, or was he someone basically that was going to continue business as usual? But the internet blocking out, that does say to me that the election must have been a contentious election. It wasn't going to be an easy win, because every time they block it out, that essentially means that the person, the current president, thinks that he's going to lose the election. So, but yeah.
And in addition to that, what I read and also learned about this guy, he was actually the people's leader coming into power. Even on his dying bed, he cried to the people that you guys should go and vote, because this election was about your freedom. Was about the future of your children. It was about this country. Taking our country into our own hands and making our own decision. While in his dying bed, he pleaded to his people to go and vote. And imagine, again, this guy was the major opposition leader in 2016. When he lost the election to this individual. And as we speak right now, there's a Pan-African movement. It's called the Pan-African Union for Social Democracy. And they are boycotting the election, saying that they fear that the poor could devour the country. And so they are boycotting this whole election. That proves to you that this man, he was supposed to be the people's leader. So he was actually advocating for a true African democracy, not a Western democracy. So there was a man that was advocating for a true African democracy. And now again, the question goes to us again. So with this whole new COVID thing, is this a new trend that is coming to take down African revolutionary? Because we have people like Farouk in Togo, he's not dying from COVID. We have Paul Biya, Cameroon, he's not dying from COVID. We have Museveni from Uganda, he's not dying from COVID. All these bad leaders, all these dictator Western puppets, why they are not dying for COVID? But our leaders, our revolutionary leaders, who are for us, who are standing for us, they are the ones dying for COVID. So that tells to us that we should try to protect our people who are in our interests, because something on all these things, something features going on within Africa right now.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It could be that COVID comes the go-to reason of death, even whenever things are suspicious. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess so it looked like the guy was going to win in that situation, and he basically just died.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like that France is looking into it. That's just my big thing. I have a very big prejudice against the country of France. But yeah.
But that just to throw off that these people, they are for us, they are looking into the case, to make us forget about their deed. But I mean, why they're not looking into the situation of the country since 60 years, and every day, every single day, you might find at least about 30, 40, 50 people to die in that part of Africa every day.
Man, this is an interesting conversation right here. But I think, like Tierney, you raised a great point as far as just like checking into these people's politics. What are their political theories? And sometimes, they use the language that the masses use, the revolutionary language. They talk about the people, but then when they get into office, and they're in a position of power, their politics begin to change, and it begins to be shaped in a way that that's counter-revolutionary. I think like last week when we was reading on national consciousness, I think that was the title of the chapter, but we talked about the national bourgeoisie, right? But these people who were fighting for liberation, independence, and once they're in a position of power, the things that they do is counter to what they set out to do initially. But this is an interesting discussion. Do a fact check, because I think it's the Republic of Congo, which is different, right, from the DRC.
Yeah, that's different. So that's very different. Okay, so that's very different. So that's why I was confused, because my understanding was that the current president of DRC is more, I guess, a lot of people think he's making reforms. So that makes sense if it was the Republic.
Yeah, actually, this is Congo Brazzaville.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's Congo Brazzaville. Yeah.
For people who don't know, that's a different country.
Yeah. So, speaking of people using the language and doing things that's like counter-revolutionary, Tamika Mallory has been in the news. Well, revolutionary news. Tierney, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm sure all of you seen this by now. So we talked, I believe, last week, I brought up the topic of Tamir Rice's mother complaining about Tamika Mallory being on a Grammy stage, which she stated, basically you're profiting off of the deaths of these young children. Now, I was a little nicer last week, to Tamika Mallory. And the reason being because we know that she did not start this whole setup of people profiting off of our misery. It's something that is long in our history. Anytime you ever have someone who's for sale, that person is more than likely going to leave the struggle and engage with white society so that they can gain from it individually. So that's something that's not new. That's why I feel like I took it a little easier on her. But since then, there has been a commercial that was released. It was a Cadillac commercial. If any of you have not seen it, I encourage you to pause this right now and Google really quickly, or look it up on YouTube, Cadillac commercial, Tamika Mallory, look it up on Twitter. It is the most disgraceful thing I've ever seen inside of a Black liberation space. And I think we've seen a lot of our people who are put out as our leaders whoring themselves out to the white system. But this is just disgusting. To the idea that you're giving a speech on black women. And so we have to go back to this issue. Why is it in 2020 to 2021, there was like an intentional effort to make it the issues of Black women, the issues of Black women, the issues of Black women, as if the issues of Black men have disappeared, as if it's gotten better for Black men, as if we're separate from them, and as if we're dealing with something that is different. That is very intentional to me. That is textbook divide and conquer. You basically, and this is something that's been done in colonialism. That's a thing I think our people are missing. Like, it's you feed one group, you say, okay, you're different. We have to focus on you. We have to do right by you. So you go into that and you make the people think, okay, yeah, I don't really want to engage with them. And then from there, you have a separation, and you are basically able to continue a system of oppression towards both people, but giving one people the idea that they're being included into society, or that they're gaining some type of acceptance. So the fact that I keep hearing these different people, oh, Black women, Black women, Black women, even when it's like in positions that are compromising, even when it's Kamala Harris as the vice president of the United States standing next to a white supremacist, that's something that we're going to celebrate, even where it's the president of the WTO, who WTO in itself is a white supremacist institution. That's something we're going to celebrate. So we can see how backwards this is, how this is manipulation. Anyone who thinks that they're really concerned about you being a Black woman, you have to understand this is only psychological warfare. And really a way to keep, it's a way to continue to colonize mind of the people. So I don't want to go too off, I'm probably talking more about this on my channel, but to get to the story, yes, it was disgraceful, and giving a speech, standing next to other Black women, and acting like this is something to be proud of, and then having by Cadillac. That was just crazy for me to see. So I'll throw it to you guys. I'm sure you have thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, you see, you just said everything. The reality here is whenever our movement is being sponsored by imperialists or the Muzungu, this is the result of what we're going to always see when our movement are being sponsored by not us. We all know Black Lives Matter, the sponsors of Black Lives Matter and the funder of Black Lives Matter. They just use few, African in there to try to dilute, the system to make us follow, the movement and thing. So that is what happening right in there. So they control them, tell them, look, you know what? In order to continue this, we have to do this. So all these are just part of the tactics to show to other, because bear in mind, in the next maybe 1 or 2 years, a few months or so, you will hear people start saying, we have come a long way, at least things are like this. And then they will keep reminding of, we have come a long way, with Black Lives Matter, this is what we have come, things have changed. Look at, this commercial, look at this lady, look at this, look at that. These are the things we're going to be hearing in the next 4 years, that we are in right now.
Yeah, I think it was a great point raised with the Cadillac commercials. Like, you're equating Black women power with having this Cadillac, having this car, which is great because that's all that was, right? It was the commercialization of the movement, and like the message itself, as far as Black women, because I agree with what you're saying. If it was just, I guess, tell it or conveyed it a little bit differently, but it did come off as like this separation, right, that's happening. But I think, like, we do need to recognize those Black women as playing a significant role in this struggle. But it did come off a little like there's this division, though. Like it was divisive in a sense. But the big thing for me was just like the Cadillac commercial. Like, you're somebody that's supposed to be anti-establishment. At least in a speech that I heard from her, she seemed to be like anti-establishment, right? Anti-capitalism. But you're promoting and advocating for people to buy Cadillacs. So, like, the revolution is not going to happen with people pulling up in Cadillacs. Like, that's not going to take place. And so I think, like, that's, that's a big contradiction. But it goes to, it makes me think about Malcolm X when he talked about the March on DC, right? And he talked about how the masses were talking about going to DC, marching on DC, and how, these white sponsors came in and went to the leadership and asked them to like take the lead on this march on Washington. And they was like, we didn't organize it. Like, we're not a part of this march. And he was like, well, we'll fund you. We'll put you in front of it. And so, like, that's what's happening now with a lot of these people who are part of this like Black Lives Matter movement, or even those who are not affiliated with it, but just like consider like the leadership of this struggle, this liberation struggle, because there is a movement happening. We're part of that movement, and there's many others that's a part of like the real movement that's trying to overturn the contradictions that exist within America and around the world. And you know, we're not promoting Cadillacs.
Yeah, and that was the point you made about women. That's something that should be emphasized. We do have issues with African women and the treatment of African women inside of our movements, but we should understand that if anything that the oppressor will do, they will exploit your weakness. So because we have not come together as a people, because we have not shown mutual respect, because we have not found ways to protect women, that is a weakness inside of our community that they will exploit. So as long as, you know, we are disorganized, you know, they can basically use our weaknesses as a way to keep us distracted, keep us arguing about things that are irrelevant, keep us focused on a part of the community instead of the whole community. So that is a call to us to come together and make it so that the enemy cannot come in and spread lies among ourselves, and we're going to fall for it. But irregardless of that, the fact that we should know, you know, that this is a tactic. We just don't take the bait. That's the way that I would say, you know, we definitely have issues in our community between each other. Don't take the bait into thinking that this white establishment cares about you, Black women. They do not, you know. This is all just a way to pacify resistance that is being posed to the system right now. And we know that if it's a lot more powerful when you have us standing together versus us being apart. So we should understand that this is a very clear agenda, and I'm disappointed in Tamika Mallory, I have to be honest. And so I still think, you know,
I see it in your eyes.
Good in her. If you know, because she's not a completely horrible person. You know, we know that she has sacrificed. We know that she was kicked out of the Women's March because she stood by Minister Farrakhan. We know that she's received death threats from white supremacists. You know, we know that, but don't think that it's not black and white. You know, being a good person and someone who loves the people doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to take compromising positions. And when it becomes a trend, we have to call you out.
And let me just add to that. Like from one quote from Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah said, we should never sleep on the imperialists. We should never sleep on the capitalists, because these capitalists, when it comes to us, they are never asleep. So in the same way they are never asleep, we should never sleep on them too. So that goes to say, these capitalists, every day and night, they are watching us. They are learning from us. They are seeing our reaction. They are seeing our video. They watch it. So they see our movement. So they see our direction. So they know that, you know, right now we are speaking on many of our platform and saying that, you know, the liberation of African people can never be done without the involvement of our women, without the involvement with our women, you know, into our liberation. If we really want to see total liberation, so they see it. So that is the reason why they are putting, you know, these women, you know, and not just women that are there for our liberation, women that are there for our struggle. They have seen these people, so they are going for these people, bringing them to their side, putting them in a way that, you know, because they know that when we see these people, we're going to follow them, because they are figure to us in our society, in our struggle. They are people that we look up to in our movement. So they go for these people and pick them and bring them and commercialize them, and then commercialize our struggle. You never see people commercializing or the Zungu struggle or the Mozuku struggle in this kind of, you know, way, because they are saying that we are saying that black money should be put into black business, should be put into black banks and whatsoever. So now, and they are saying some of these things that they are losing, you know, because they have lost money in some other way. So they are using our women now, like for what we saw in the commercial, you know, telling us like, look, we should go and invest in Cadillacs. We should go and invest in cars. We should go and invest in their product. We should go and invest in their investment. We should go and patronize their investment. That's why we should go put their money. So in other way, because what she did right there was nothing beneficial to us when it comes to our struggle.
That's Americanism. Speaking of money, we're going to move into this reparations talk. But I think like that's Americanism. We equate, or America equates freedom with owning things, even if it's like owning and controlling like material things and also people. And so that's the thing about slavery. The thing about slavery, and even now, to be able to control people's labor. But we want to quickly go into Evanston, Illinois, first city to issue reparations for slavery, if you want to call it reparations. I don't even call this reparations, but what's happening is over the next 10 years, I believe, they're going to be issuing up to $10 million. Wow, $10 million to the Black residents, African residents of Evanston. And so the first phase involves 16 residents receiving $25,000 each, but not directly. It's going to go towards housing, like such things as repair, property costs, and so forth. So that's 16 people in this first round. So I wanted to look at demographics. Like, I'm a nerd like that. So it's like population is 74,000 people in Evanston, and 18% of that population is Black African American. 18%, which is somewhere around 13,000 to 14,000 people that are African American. So this so-called reparations is going to a specific group of people out in that population. So it's targeting people that lived in that area from 1919 to 1969. And so there's a lot I wanted to say, but I do want to open it up. But one thing that I will say is that we have to understand that colonialism is an ongoing, system. We're constantly being oppressed and exploited. From 1969 is just a era of this 600-year relationship that we had with Europeans in this system. And so in 400 years, if you want to just talk about the United States of America, but I want to open it up. I don't think that's reparations. And last thing too, they're using marijuana to fund this reparations thing. So, yeah. What are your thoughts?
I mean, listen, I have consistently said, I feel like unless our people have power, meaning we're able to force the issue, we're able to tell the system, you need to do this or you do face some type of consequence, which is typically today, it's a monetary consequence, but there are other consequences, of course. Unless we have that type of power, then we really have to understand whatever they package to as reparations is not going to do anything to repair. And power doesn't come from complaining. Power doesn't come from marching. Power comes from organizing. And so if our people are serious about this reparations issue, we have to come together and organize to where we force the issue. Otherwise, they will be able to they're controlling the narrative right now. We don't control the narrative on reparations. They control it. They could say, put out an article. This is what reparations is. Yay, we're making progress. And you'll have some people who are just, not even analytical of the situation say, yay, we're getting reparations. Because I've seen people cheering about this, believe it or not, happy about this. And so this is what happens when you don't have power. So if we're serious about this reparations issue, we have to organize.
Yeah, you see, like I say again, these capitalists, 24/7, they are studying our movement. They know that almost in the Western world, even down to Africa, we all have the same language and we all have the same understanding, and we all are asking for reparation. I tell you this, Africa right now, they are even asking for reparation. So they are saying to it that this thing is actually becoming worldwide. So they are trying to find a way again to divide us in other ways. Because I'm not even going to call this reparation. Because when they were giving reparation to the Chinese, or let's say to the Japanese, they didn't tell the Japanese that we are about to give you reparation, but we're not going to give you the catch. We're going to build housing unit for you in Japan and pour you in it. When they were giving reparation to Asia, they didn't tell Asia that we come into Asia and then build you a housing unit or apartments to put your citizen in it. When they were giving reparation to the Indian, they didn't tell the Indian that, okay, you know what, we're going to move you to one area and then pour buy, how to call it, housing unit there and pour you in it, or open mall for you, so where you can go and shopping and think. They didn't control the money. They gave these people the money that these people requested for. So that is not reparation for the people in a part of the region, because first of all, I think it comes with condition. They're not giving you the cash. They're going to give you part of that money going to go towards housing unit. Now, who the money going to again? Who own those housing estate or unit? Who the money going to? It going back to the same people. So it's like they just gave you the money. It seems that they just gave you an area to live. That's all. But they're not giving you the money. The money is going right back to them. So that is not reparation. So we shouldn't confuse that with what we are asking for. And, you know, folks, we shouldn't confuse that with what we are asking for. That is not reparation.
That was a powerful point you just made, because that's the thoughts that I had. Like, those resources is going right back to the colonizer at the end of the day. They're not even touching. They don't have a decision. I like to hear the conversation that was had between them when they was even discussing this plan. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is ridiculous. But I also came across Joe Biden, and we're going to transition to the book. But last point is Joe Biden. They asked him a question whether he supports reparations, and he said he does support a study on reparations. They asked him, will he sign legislation that supports this study? And his office declined to answer. What kind of talk is that?
Oh crap! I did not catch that.
Is that's what they call double talk? Like, what's that? There's a name for that. I don't know what that is.
That wow.
Yeah.
Y'all voted for it. Some of y'all.
Make sure you download the link in the chat. We're going to start on chapter 4 on national culture. So give you a little time to get to that. I want to encourage everyone to apply to become a member of We Charge Colonialism and join us in this fight to get the international community to recognize that we are a colonized people within the borders of the United States. We understand that African people are colonized in other places as well. So this is an international struggle. But eternally, we represent a front on this struggle to overturn this relationship that we have with the imperial powers. So apply to We Charge Colonialism. If there's an issue, we have been having issues with the membership link. So if you don't get a response, make sure you email us at WeChargeColonialism. Correct me if I'm wrong, but WeChargeColonialism@gmail.com.
Or info at WeChargeColonialism.org.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to move into the reading. I think, this is one of the, this whole book, we've been going through this book, if you've been with us, and it's really given us a clear understanding of the struggles, the struggles of national liberation and the psychology of those who are taking part in this revolution and struggle for liberation. So I'm going to start with the quote at the top. It is not enough to write a revolutionary hymn to be a part of the African Revolution. One has to join with the people to make this revolution. Make it with the people and the hymns will automatically follow. For an act to be authentic, one has to be a vital part of Africa and its thinking, part of all that popular energy mobilized for the liberation, progress, and happiness of Africa. Outside this single struggle, there is no place for either the artist or the intellectual who is not committed and totally mobilized for the people and the great fight waged by Africa and suffering humanity. That quote is from Sekou Touré. Each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it in a relative opacity. In the underdeveloped countries, preceding generations have simultaneously resisted the insidious agenda of colonialism and paved the way for the emergence of the current struggles. Now that we are in the heat of combat, we must shed the habit of decrying the efforts of our forefathers or feigning incomprehension at their silence or passiveness. They fought as best they could with the weapons they possessed at the time. And if their struggle did not reverberate throughout the international arena, the reason should be attributed not so much to a lack of heroism, but to a fundamentally different international situation. More than one colonized subject had to say, "We've had enough." More than one tribe had to rebel. More than one peasant revolt had to be quelled. More than one demonstration to be repressed for us today to stand firm, certain of our victory. For us who are determined to break the back of colonialism, our historic mission is to authorize every revolt, every desperate act, and every attack aborted or drowned in blood. That's an interesting quote right there.
Yeah, I have it highlighted. But
yeah.
You know, I think I will make just a point, you know, in that I think it's very important when he says that because our previous leaders have failed, it's not necessary, or not failed, I like they have not seen the end to the revolution to liberate our people. It's not the people, because to me, like when you look at some of the great people who have come out of our liberation struggle, look at, you know, Marcus Garvey, look at W.E.B. Du Bois and Malcolm and Asada and all these like powerful people. They were the right people, but sometimes it's really about the environment. Like, if you're honest, a lot of the people who were even rose to prominence back then, had they come out right now, like would Malcolm X come out? If he came out right now, would he receive the same support from people when it's hard to even get people to come outside, you know, and get off social media? Would he have gotten the same support? So a lot of times it's really not the people. There are people who exist who are activists who, to me, are just as potent as the people who have come before them. But it's really about the environment and the international situation as it exists and whether revolution is called for at that particular moment.
Okay, yeah. In addition to that, from what we can also draw from that part of the chapter is that he was actually saying that you know, we as African in our struggle, in our liberation, we should never confuse our liberation with entertainment. So we should always distinguish our liberation from entertainment. We should know the difference, and that is what we are saying consistently, you know, with our struggle today, where our struggle are being used, you know, to infuse it with entertainment and stuff. So he's trying to tell us that we should know the difference. We should know what entertainment is, and we should know what liberation is. And he also went as far as adding to what Malcolm X just said. Malcolm X said, "By any means necessary." And he went on to explain by saying, you know, we should use everything. I'm just trying to paraphrase what you read. We should use everything, you know, we should use everything that we have when it comes to our liberation. You know, we should use everything that we have, you know, to liberate us when it comes to our liberation. So we should never leave anything out, to say we should never compromise anything like, okay, you know, this is not important. When it comes to our liberation, everything is important. So we should use everything that we have by any means necessary. And we should know the difference of our liberation with entertainment.
Woo, man, I'm gonna just keep going. This is exciting. In this chapter, we shall analyze the fundamental issue of the legitimate claim to a nation. The political party that mobilizes the people, however, is little concerned with this issue of legitimacy. Political parties are concerned solely with daily reality, and it is in the name of this reality, in the name of this immediacy, which influences the present and future of men and women, that they make their call to action. The political party may very well speak of the nation in emotional terms, but it is primarily interested in getting the people who are listening to understand that they must join in the struggle if they want quite simply to exist. We now know that in the first phase of the national struggle, colonialism attempts to diffuse nationalist demands by manipulating economic doctrine. At the first signs of a dispute, colonialism feigns comprehension by acknowledging with ostentatious humility that the territory is suffering from serious underdevelopment that requires major social and economic reforms. And it is true that certain spectacular measures, such as the opening of work sites for the unemployed here and there, delay the formation of a national consciousness by a few years. But sooner or later, colonialism realizes it is incapable of achieving a program of socio-economic reforms that will satisfy the aspirations of the colonized masses. Even when it comes to filling their bellies, colonialism proves to be inherently powerless. The colonialist state very quickly discovers that any attempt to disarm the national parties at a purely economic level would be tantamount to practicing in the colonies what it did not want to do on its own territory. And it is no coincidence that today the doctrine of cartierism is on the rise just about everywhere.
Okay, so I think that was very powerful because it reflects, as all this entire book has done, it really reflects our current situation. What do you hear consistently when you're looking at institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations? Oh, we want development for African people. Oh, we want progress for African Americans. We want this, we want that. Not acknowledging the fact that these things come at a real cost. And until we get, what we really want, which is full dignity, full humanity, full self-determination, then we will not be quenched. So it's true. The colonists still throw you little concessions. They'll try to work into their economic system a way to, like we just talked about with the reparations. Oh, okay, let's throw them some money. We'll use the marijuana tax to pay for this. Okay, that should make them settle down. But of course, that will never reverse our economic situation, being the exploited people. So until we are able to force the issue that we don't just want these concessions, we want to be the ones in control of our own destinies. Control, that's something very different than just getting a check. Control of your power, control of what happens, as far as your life, your quality of life. That type of control is not something that is easily paid for. So that will take our people being the ones who are going to be able to force those types of issues and not take these little piecemeal concessions as they do to pacify us. That's the reason why we get these types of things.
You're on mute.
In addition to that, Walter Rodney also talked about that in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Exactly, what you just read down there is exactly the same thing he said. He said, these capitalists, right, they study us a lot. So whenever they see that our movement, is going to cause some type of carrier to their establishment, some type of carrier to what is benefiting them, they don't mind coming out to spend some money. They don't mind coming out to spend some money, and because they know that money that they're going to spend, it's not going to shake them, because the reality here is the same money they're going to spend, they get it from us. They're getting it from the oppressor. So they don't mind bringing it by, spending some on the oppressor, as long as it's going to silence the oppressor to sit down and go back in their little corner so that they will keep, being oppressed. He stated clearly in his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and they have been using the same tactics, time to time, because at the end of the day, the money they're using is not their money. The resources they're using is not their resources. So if it's going to take them to take part of that resources, just little to spend it on the oppressed, they will do that.
Man.
Oh wait, wait, what's
y'all on fire. Y'all on fire.
Because when Frank said, he reminded me of something. I'm going to post this inside of the chat for everyone. There's this report called Honest Accounts, and like Frank said, they're using our own money. It says $162 billion. This is just basically from deals that happen with Africa. They put in $162 into Africa, but take out $203 billion out. with 41 billion actually extracted from the continent each year. So it's true. Like this is they look at these payments, these little things that they give, you know, aid. It's really kind of like, okay, we have to pay this so that we can make sure that we can get more. But they're really paying us with the same money that they use to take out. So y'all should check out that report. It's really good.
All right, all right. As you was speaking, Frank, it made me think of I don't know why, but the Education of Sonny Carson, which is a 70s film. It's based on a true story of a loosely based story of Sonny Carson, who is an activist story. But there's these gangs that's fighting, and the leader of the gang, he's sitting up there and he's telling everybody in his gang that they should stay cool. Like they're fighting with the other gang, and their members of their gang are getting beat up, and he's still telling them to stay cool. And the guys, he said, if we stay too cool, we're gonna lose. And I feel like that's what these so-called leaders of our community, the colonists, is telling them. Hey, take these resources. Tell your people just to calm down and be patient. And they come in and they telling us the masses to be patient, and the African working class is listening to them. But that's the attitude we got to have. If we be too patient, we be too cool, we're going to lose. Like, we don't have time to wait. We need reparations. We need our independence right now. So let me go, because time is. Cartier's bitter disillusionment with France's stubborn determination to retain ties with people it will have to feed, whereas so many French citizens are in dire straits, reflects colonialism's inability to transform itself into a nonpartisan aid program. Hence, once again, no need to waste time repeating, better to go hungry with dignity than to eat one's fill in slavery. On the contrary, we must persuade ourselves that colonialism is incapable of procuring for colonized people the material conditions likely to make them forget their quest for dignity. Once colonialism has understood where its social reform tactics would lead it, let me read that again. Once colonialism has understood where its social reform tactics will lead it, back come the old reflexes of adding police reinforcements, dispatching troops, and establishing a regime of terror better suited to its interests and its psychology. Should I go or keep going? All right. Within the political parties, or rather parallel to them, we find the culture class of colonized intellectuals. The recognition of a national culture and its right to exist represent their favorite stamping ground. Whereas the politicians integrate their action in the present, the intellectuals place themselves in the context of history. Faced with the colonized intellectuals' debunking of the colonialist theory of a pre-colonial barbarism, colonialism's response is mute. It is especially mute since the ideals put forward by the young colonized intelligentsia are widely accepted by metropolitan specialists. It is in fact now commonly recognized that for several decades, numerous European researchers have widely rehabilitated Africa, Mexican, and Peruvian civilizations. Some have been surprised by the passion invested by the colonized intellectuals in their defense of a national culture. But those who consider this passion exaggerated are strangely apt to forget that their psyche and their ego are conveniently safeguarded by a French or German culture whose worth has been proven and which has gone unchallenged. I conceded the fact that the actual existence of an Aztec civilization has done little to change the diet of today's Mexican peasant. I concede that whatever proof there is of a once mighty Songhai civilization does not change the fact that the Songhaians today are undernourished, illiterate, abandoned to the skies and water, with a blank mind and glazed eyes. But as we have said on several occasions, this passionate quest for a national culture prior to the colonial era can be justified by the colonized intellectuals' shared interest in stepping back and taking a hard look at the Western culture in which they risk becoming ensnared. Fully aware they are in the process of losing themselves and consequently of being lost to their people. These men work away with raging heart and furious mind to renew contact with their people's oldest inner essence, the farthest removed from colonial times.
We could
right there.
Oh, go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, okay. That chapter again, just kind of explain our current situation that we are going through right now. I would say is that the chapter is telling us that colonialism, can never, empower us. They never did, and they will never do. So that goes to say that those of our brothers and sisters who thinks that they can work with the colonialists to bring in stability, to bring in peace, to bring in empowerment, to bring in equality, they are in total failures. If you think the colonialists going to take your culture to make your culture their culture, you are in total failures. For one fact, and that is a proven fact, when these colonialists were leaving some of these African nations, when we were fighting for independence, for example, Guinea, what happened? They burned down everything that they built in our country because they were leaving. The French burned down everything. And not only in Guinea, they did it in a lot of countries in Africa. They burned down everything, all their properties. They burned it down and they left. So that shows to you that they are not willing to even learn any of our languages and of our culture, because they feel that our culture, they can never fit into our culture, but they prefer giving their culture to us so that we can feel that we are part of them. And that is what today we are struggling with, because we feel that we are part of them because we are learning their culture. We are passing their culture on to our next generation that are coming. So the next generation that are coming will also see them as part of these people, but they never see us as part of us. You see, because these people since a colonial time, these people have been in Africa. These people have been ruling Africa. They have never empowered African people. They have never empowered Africa. So what do you think in this present time? They're going to work with us to empower us to develop Africa. It's never going to work. So if our brothers and sisters on the other side think that they are going to work with the colonialists, they are going to work with what they call globalism, it's never going to happen. You are in total disasters.
Frank's on fire there. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the point that he's making is that, yes, we can, look at our economic situation only and say, that's the only thing that we should be occupied with. We have to basically reverse, the effects that our people are feeling, but you cannot neglect the cultural aspect of what's actually happening too. And I think even that really does bleed into the economic liberation or the decolonization in itself, because if you look at the fact that whenever we do rid ourselves of the European oppressor, at some point we're going to have to come to a consensus. Okay, what type of systems do we want to live under? Do we continue what the colonized person has taught us? And do we continue that legacy for our children? And there you have to understand, why is it that these people came into and encountered African people with such brutality, and what systems justified that brutality? Of course, we know the European was being motivated by the fact that Africans had everything. They had all the natural resources and they had almost none. So when you understand that the people who are coming in with a legal system with that type of situation where they have none of the things that the other people have, they're going to go in and put in place doctrines that are going to benefit the idea that we can acquire things even though it's not really ours. Things like private property, things like I landed here first, therefore this is something that I'm claiming. That's really what the legal system was there to justify. It was there to justify the idea that the people who have none of these resources are able to take from the people who have all of them. So it's very important when you're talking about decolonization, not to just focus on fighting the oppression, but also focus on how do you ultimately plan for a system that's going to be reflective of our people. And I think the more and more I see a lot of revolutions, or a lot of revolts rather, happening among our people, whether they're in Africa, in Haiti, whether they're in the US, whatever, I see the lack of focus on changing the cultural aspect. We're thinking about getting rid of one president and not replacing a system that created the other one. Not understanding that you can put like, you know, Ikemba said earlier in the broadcast, you can put someone in place, and if the system's still intact, you're still going to get the same results. So there has to be a real challenge of the entire political system that has been given to us, whether this is something that is fitting to our people, whether it benefits our people. And if there are benefits, you know, there's no problem with saying, okay, this is something that, and now in today's context, we can adapt to us. But if something is completely adverse to our interests, we have to be ready to reverse that as a cultural legacy of our people.
Man, I unite with everything that was said. You know, just to add to this particular point about culture, I think what Frantz Fanon is also getting at, and I think he gets at it a little bit later, is talking about this movement towards African culture pre-colonization, and using that sort of how intellectuals use that as a wanting to use that as use that as a framework, a point of reference to African people today, like just that experience beginning pre-colonial, during pre-colonial times. And so he gets into the Negritude or Negritude movement in this particular chapter, and how that was developed as a sort of just like a what's the word I'm looking for, to like counterbalance, or just created as I'm losing the word to lose me right now, but it became an opposition to this colonial idea of African people not contributing nothing to history, right? And so that becomes important, because under colonialism, our oppression and exploitation always becomes rationalized through the negation of what it is that we contribute to society, to history. And there's always this dehumanization of African people, so that it's this idea that we need to be civilized, that we need to be, cultured, because we don't have these things. And so, and that's what, that movement, the Negritude movement and other movements that focused on the culture aspect, that's how they developed. But, I think that's an important point. There was something else, too, that was raised as far as, the only thing that I want to, last point that I will make is just like how it's very important that we do develop alternatives when it comes to building African power and liberation, alternatives to the system, like this movement to integrate or to be equal with the colonizer, which a lot of these movements are. That's why you have to check, like, what's the politics? As you raised earlier, Tierney, like, what's this person's politics? Because a lot of people just want to be equal or integrate into this colonial system. But as Malcolm said, like, who are they to be equal to? If anything, they should be integrating into something that we are building. They should want to be a part of our society. And so I'm gonna just leave the last words with y'all before we close out. If y'all had anything y'all wanted to add.
You want to go first, Tierney?
Or we can talk about this.
I thought that was a good, wrap up. Essentially, that was a powerful chapter where we're going over the issue of our culture as an African people. And I encourage particularly my people who don't want to identify with their African culture to identify what has been robbed from you, because there is a real legacy of a people who struggled. And how is it that taking that identity from you has benefited the colonial system, which it has, but that's a whole other conversation. We're wrapping up. So
yeah, right. Just to add up and wrapping up what Dr. Fanon is saying in this chapter of the reading is actually trying to tell us that, look, African, in order to get your total liberation, you have to, number one, identify yourself. You have to have your own self-reflection of yourself. That is, you have to have your culture. Before you came into this part of the society, in this part of the world, you have your own identity. You have your own your own culture, your own reflection, that you can look in the mirror and see yourself without seeing yourself through another pricing. Because when you see yourself through another person, you are actually that pricing, and you will live the mindset of that pricing. That person will control your intellectual ability to be yourself. So he's telling us to be ourselves than to be somebody else. And he's telling us to be our own self, to be our own reservoir, our own system that we can live by to benefit us.
Indeed, indeed. So I just want to thank everybody that tuned into this study, to this podcast. We're here every Saturday at 10 a.m. So, make sure you spread the word, let people know. We charge colonialism, podcasts, and book club. Want as many Africans to be a part of this experience as possible as we work to decolonize our minds, our bodies, and spaces. So, let's continue this discussion. Thank you.